viewers! I know you've waited a little bit longer for this one, but I am moving, as you know. I've been painting like a champ. I was also in London yesterday, so I drove to London at 5 o'clock in the morning, drove straight back and was painting till the wee hours. Didn't have enough time to get this out, but I'm going to try and get it out for you today. Yeah! Those of you who've been following me in game, I just want to address this quickly because you keep asking me. I don't actually move until the 9th, which is only a couple of days away, and the internet will go off till the 15th. I will try and get some content out for you in the meantime. I will do my best, champs. That's all I can say. I'm recording like a boss, but I'm also painting like a boss as well. I am dropping some Da Vinci Code mofo all over this house, getting it ready and getting our green screen up and running. Again, another thing you've been asking me in game, I was trying to keep it secret, but it's just impossible. I have found a new raiding guild. I will be changing raiding guild for Mr. Pandaria. I am changing to Method. That's right, the world's second guild up until Dragon Soul when the Koreans stole it and the guild was unfortunately banned. Oh, sad face. But I'm pretty sure if they weren't banned and they had the gear to get down Spine of Death, then they would have been world second or world first. I'm desperately chasing that world first, guys, so that brings some awesome content to you. I had a wonderful hour-and-a-half interview with Roger Brown. A great Greek guy. I had a fantastic conversation with him. I'm going to talk in a separate video about the advantages and disadvantages I will be facing, because I will certainly be facing some major uphill struggles, my friends. The other secret I was trying to keep is what class I will be playing, but again, I've been training like it's the Olympics. I know it's coming to London and seems like a little bit of a plug for those, but whatever. I'm going to be playing a Warlock. A Warlock, a class I haven't raided on for almost 2 years, so now I have to turn my Warlock skills not only to being a decent player, which is the stuff I can put out for you guys, but actually to a world first DPS player. Woo! Separate video coming on that one. So today we're going to look at the Affliction Warlock. That's right, the Affliction Warlock. This is actually my favourite spec. I really like all the Warlock specs. I do like Demonology, although a lot of people say they don't like it. I really like Demonology. I think it's a hell of a lot of fun. Destruction's actually my worst spec. I just don't find it that enjoyable to be a full nuke player. Warlocks have never been for me a full nuke player, and ever since TBC with the whole sacrifice your succubus Shuttle Bolt spec, I went off Destruction a little bit. It's a little bit more involved now, but nothing special. But the most involved spec for me, which is what I really like, is where we really have potential to push out some huge DPS if we can use our skills to the max, is Affliction. Absolutely love Affliction. So I'm going to talk about that today. The first thing I want to bring up to you guys, obviously I'm not on the green screen, won't be happening until I get the new place, is all about focus target. Your most important aspect of playing the Affliction Warlock is actually your focus target and the ability to quick swap which your focus is. Very important that you get a macro set up that instantly focuses targets. You don't have time to type it because you will be swapping your focus a hell of a lot, especially when a lot of ads are involved. Affliction grows and grows and grows the more ads are involved. Obviously in Mr. Pandaria, looking at the talent changes, Affliction will not be as powerful multi-dotting, but as it stands now, it's all about controlling where your dots are and making decisions on the fly as to which mobs should be haunted. Should we use Bane of Doom? Should we use Bane of Agony? All these kind of things. So what I recommend to you is definitely get your focus target up and have your dots tracked on your focus target in a nice, easy place to see. As you can see in the background where I'm playing now, is you can see my focus target is always nice and clear, and I can see the dots that are rolling on it. So why do we need to make these snap decisions, Preacher? What are you talking about? Well, let's talk about Haunt for a start. Haunt increases our dot damage by a solid 20%. So we want to make sure our Haunt is always on the target that's going to get the most damage and take the most damage if possible. If we look at a fight like Warlord Jonas, he takes more damage. So theoretically speaking, from a DPS point of view, we want our Haunt permanently on that target. We also want our pet on that target. I've been doing all sorts of crazy things like making sure my pet was permanently on passive to get reused to microing a pet like a champ. I've been doing all that kind of stuff, and you need to be able to be ready for this. Just having your pet on assist me is actually a DPS loss. You need to be very, very wary of where your pet is and what he's doing and where your Haunt is. So let's say we've got to switch targets. We instantly need to put that boss on focus while we're DPSing other targets, and we need to be managing the dots on the other target, okay? We need to make sure Haunt is always up, and we need to make sure the rest of our dots are UA, our Corruption naturally refreshed by Haunt, and our Bane of Agony, or Bane of Doom if we're being a little bit sly, but that takes a little bit more skill we're going to talk about shortly, is to be tracking those accurately, guys. You really need a solid add-on. I use Class Timer, as many of you guys know, you've watched my UI video. If you're asking about my UI, it's on my channel. Go and watch it there. There's a UI video on there of what I use. I use Class Timer to accurately track. I have a nice countdown bar of when my dots will need refreshing with the time they need refreshing. One of the big things about Affliction is knowing how long your cast takes. UA takes a second. Everything else takes this amount of time, that amount of time. You need to be tracking when those dots have run out and have I got time to recast before it runs out. Remember the way dot clipping works in Cataclysm, guys, is if you can reapply a spell just before it runs out, and you will still keep that last tick. It wasn't like the old days where we had to time it to the second when a dot ran out. We can now cast it just before the last tick and get a really nice 100% uptime on our dots. That's what we're aiming for as Affliction, is 100% uptime on all our dots, on all our targets. We need to keep it up there because our dots tick like an absolute beast. Total beast. They are awesome. We need to make sure they're up all the time. So get your focus target, get practicing with it. You can do this on a training dummy. Remember, training dummy DPS means nothing, but you can absolutely totally practice your focus target. The next thing I want to talk about very briefly is Demon Soul and how it works. Demon Soul is a big buff to our dot damage. Demon Soul Fel Hunter, I should say. We use our Fel Hunter for all our DPS as Affliction, and our Demon Soul Fel Hunter is a nice big buff to our shadow damage, our damage over time shadow spells, okay? When we pop Demon Soul, it's very important that we reapply our dots. Why? Because dots, if you don't know how the mechanics of dots work, Corruption, UA, Bane of Agony, whatever it might be, takes a snapshot of your stats at the time. Okay, that is something to bear in mind. This includes haste and things like heroism, bloodlust, all that kind of stuff, and any buffs you have on yourself at the time. If you've got a potion up, trinket procs, all that kind of stuff, your dots, when you cast them, will take the benefit of that, and only when you refresh those dots will it reassess what damage those dots should be doing. So when we pop cooldowns like Demon Soul, using our trinkets, using things like that, we need to recast our dots, especially when we get things like bloodlust and heroism. Recast those dots so they get the full benefit of what you're doing. If you don't recast them, they get no benefit of your big extra damage, your extra intellect, your extra spell power, all that kind of stuff. Your dots will get no benefit whatsoever if you don't bother to recast them. Very important, guys. So I'm going to talk briefly about the opener. When you open as an Affliction Warlock, there's a set way of doing it which maximizes your potential. First question you ask is, when are we heroism? When are we using bloodlust? If we're not using it towards the end of the fight, fine, we can do our standard nice happy opener. And that opener is this: as your target is about to approach, as your tank is about ready to pull, we start pre-casting Shadow Bolt. The second your tank goes in for that aggro, we need to have a Shadow Bolt in the air. It needs to be flying in like the wings of death. We need that Shadow Bolt on its way. Why? When that Shadow Bolt makes contact, it's going to start stacking Shadow Embrace, which increases the crit chance on the boss. But it's also going to fire off your trinkets. It's going to fire off your things like your enchants, like Power Torrent, all that kind of stuff. Things that have been waiting to proc while you've not been in combat are going to fire off. We then follow it up with a Haunt. This then helps us with anything that didn't proc off the Shadow Bolt is likely to proc off Haunt. So we fire off our Shadow Bolt, we fire off our Haunt, and then before we do anything else, before we do the rest of our dots, we then fire off our Demon Soul on any unused trinkets, all that kind of stuff. We buff ourselves up like Iron Man. It's like getting into your suit, guys. You really need to do this, okay? You start buffing yourself up, you fire all that good stuff off. Remember, if you've got the big set bonus where your Soulfire is going to buff your spell power, you need to get a Soulfire instant cast in there as well, using your instant cast Soulfire. Get that 10% spell power, that's also going to benefit your dots. Then you're going to slap on your Unstable Affliction, you're going to slap on your Bane of Doom or Bane of Agony. Remember, use Bane of Doom if that target will last at least 15 seconds. A boss is generally going to do that, so you're going to keep your Bane of Doom up. And then you fire off your Corruption last. That's going to allow you generally to fill in one Shadow Bolt, or maybe just cast Rehaunt depending on your haste. We always focus as haste. And then we've got some big daddy dots on the target. All our dots are nicely buffed to the max, especially if we've pre-potted just before the pull. All that intellect, all them extra trinket procs, all that stuff, and all the Demon Soul is all benefiting those first few dots, guys. And that's going to be your solid opener while we fill in with Shadow Bolt, and we aim for 100% uptime on the rest of our dots. Now, this can change if we've got many things to be DPSing. Why? Soul Swap. Soul Swap is our ability to suck the dots off a target and apply them to something else. Instant cast, so we don't need to spend a few global cooldowns putting back on our Unstable Affliction, our Bane of Agony, and our Corruption. Now, the problem is, Bane of Doom can only actually apply to one target. So if we are permanently soul swapping between two targets, we're generally going to want to use Bane of Agony. Why? So our soul swap can actually copy that as well, and we're not wasting more global cooldowns and losing DPS by having to reapply Bane of Agony or Bane of Doom on different targets. This then comes into if we've got 3 targets, let's say it's the boss, and we're going to be rotating between 2 other targets as well. Go ahead and put your Bane of Doom on that one target. Why? One, it's a dot that's going to last its full duration. Remember, Bane of Doom lasts a full minute. And while we're DPSing the other two, we can keep Bane of Agony on those two. And it gives us one less dot to worry about that's doing its maximum damage on our main target that's going to have Haunt on it and our pet as well. So you need to start making these snap decisions. Which moss am I going to be DPSing a lot? Have I got 3 targets? Then I can put Agony on the other two and soul swap between those two while keeping Bane of Doom on my main target. And this is going to start pushing your DPS from being decent to really high. That's what we're aiming for, is really solid high DPS. That's how I want you to do it, guys. Start practicing that. You can do that on a training dummy, that's fine. Don't worry about your damage. It's all about controlling your dots and aiming for 100% uptime. Really easy. Next thing I want to talk to you about is your Doom Guard, a solid DPS boost. And if you've got a 2-piece tier 13 bonus, you're obviously going to get to use 2 Doom Guards per fight. This is how your Doom Guard works, guys, okay? He has his own separate list of mechanics. Your Doom Guard benefits from buffs that you're on yourself. Intellect mainly, okay? Intellect, crit, that kind of stuff, he benefits from it. Your haste from your gear, he benefits from a little bit, but mainly he's going to have the same amount of casts all the time. He does not benefit from heroism or bloodlust or anything like that, time warp, whatever you want to call it. He doesn't get the benefit even if you have the buff on yourself before you cast it, or he's out and then he gets bloodlust. He doesn't change his amount of cast, guys. So all you need to do when you summon a maximum bro-fisting Doom Guard, a big badass Doom Guard, is make sure you have the most intellect buffs on you at the time of casting. So that means easily, you can picture this straight away, is you definitely want to be casting your Doom Guard at the very beginning of the fight. We don't care about bloodlust and heroism for our Doom Guard. When we pull and we've got our trinket up, we've got our potion on, we've demon souled, we've got all this kind of buffs going on in ourselves, then we want to drop a big bro-fisting Doom Guard, an absolute stormer of a Doom Guard who's going to be firing out some big badass Shuttle Bolts and will do tremendous amount of damage for you guys. If it's a decently long fight, we're also, with the tier 13 2-set bonus mind, we're going to get the chance to pop another Doom Guard later. So this then comes into how do we use our cooldowns through the fight. Well, as I've said, Demon Soul actually benefits the dots before you cast them. So a good time to cast Demon Soul is when your trinkets are up. Keep an eye out of your unused trinkets. Generally, they're about 2 minutes, which is the same as Demon Soul, so we can actually macro those together really nicely. But we want to time it for when our Unstable Affliction is about to run out, and our Bane of Doom and our Haunt is about ready to be casted. Because Demon Soul's on a 2-minute cooldown, and our Bane of Doom lasts exactly 1 minute, we can generally time this really, really well, guys. I want you to picture this in your mind. Demon Soul's 2 minutes, Bane of Doom is 1 minute. So after the end of my second Bane of Doom, I should be coming up to the point where my Bane of Doom is about to run out. I can pop Demon Soul, get a big fat Bane of Doom on, and then I can also recast my Haunt, my Unstable Affliction. Remember, by casting Haunt, that's automatically updating your Corruption, so you don't need to worry about that. And that's you maximising your Demon Soul midway through the fight. And then you've got all these cooldowns up again. Go ahead and pop another Doom Guard if you can. We certainly want to be aiming for having a Demon Soul during our execute phase, guys. This is when we pop our Drain Soul below 25%. We want to be using our Demon Soul then as well. It's going to buff that Drain Soul. So remember, Unstable Affliction and Corruption are refreshed by Drain Soul. So the only thing we ever need to recast at that point is actually our Bane of Doom, and then we can go into a big Drain Soul area. Really dropping big Drain Souls, keeping Haunt on cooldown and just draining that soul, baby. That's all you need to be doing. Drain Soul is actually, in our execute phase, is almost underwhelming in what we need to do, but it's big damage. Huge amounts of damage, guys, because all we do is we keep our Haunt on and we Drain Soul. Keep Bane of Dooming if that target is going to last long enough to get our 15. Just to talk about clipping Bane of Doom. Bane of Doom ticks every 15 seconds, as you should be aware. So Bane of Doom is the only one we don't want to refresh just as it's about to run out. We actually want it to get that last tick. Otherwise we lose a big 15 seconds worth of dot damage that does no longer exist because we refreshed it. Bane of Doom does not tick as soon as we put it on. It doesn't. It has to wait 15 seconds to get a tick off. That means when it's about to run out, that last big tick is going to be on the very last second it works. So you want Bane of Doom to literally run out and then recast it, guys. That's how you're going to maximise your damage on your Bane of Doom. Really think about that and try and maximise that potential. Don't clip your Bane of Doom. It was such a DPS waste. That big damage that comes every 15 seconds will just be lost into the nether along with your Warlock demons, and they're going to be laughing their balls off at you guys. You don't want to do that whatsoever. Really poor. That's the main things I want you to think about on your Affliction Warlock, especially trying to get into melee range to try and drop a Shadow Flame. Remember, it's really not worth running a long way to do it. In general, try and think about where your position is going to be, and if you can get into melee range safely at the very beginning of the pull while you're casting your instant cast dots, like your Corruption, like your Bane of Doom, start running in while you're doing that, and then you should hopefully be in melee range and use a Shadow Flame on cooldown. It doesn't seem like a lot of damage, guys, but the fact is, it is a lot of damage. It will definitely boost your DPS up to be keeping Shadow Flame on cooldown, but don't go out of your way to do it, guys. If you've got to move, you've got to move. The final thing I want to touch on for the Affliction Warlock is your Demon Portal. Now, this applies to all specs. What is the big thing we've said in all our caster guides, is the fact that movement is a complete fuck-up. A lot of people seem to think, well, we've got Fel Flame, it's instant cast, it refreshes our Unstable Affliction, it should be fine. Fel Flame should only ever be used if you don't need to refresh Corruption, and you don't need to refresh a dot, and you don't need to use Life Tap. That is the only time. If there is literally nothing else you can do, then you Fel Flame. Fel Flame should not be used to refresh your Unstable Affliction. It's really not worth it. The amount of Fel Flames taken to get your Unstable Affliction back to a full duration, you might as well have just spent the 1 second recasting your Unstable Affliction and had much more DPS out of it. Fel Flame is a tricky one, guys. You really need to decide, I'm about to move, okay? Well, I haven't got anywhere near full mana. Using a life tap while you're moving is actually a DPS boost, because you don't need to life tap when you're finally back in a stationary position. Is my Bane of Doom or Bane of Agony about to run out? Feel free to clip the last tick of Bane of Agony, that's okay. What you don't want to be doing is clipping Bane of Doom. Make these decisions on the go. Can I cast an Unstable Affliction? It only takes 1 second. Can I get away with casting that just as I'm about to move, and then move and do a life tap? All that kind of stuff. If you can't refresh a dot, or you don't need to do that, or you can't Shadow Flame, which is of course instant cast, then go ahead and use a Fel Flame. But don't think of it as something that can refresh Unstable Affliction and can do anything other than the basics. Fill in for a little bit of damage while you're moving. That's all it's for, guys. Nothing else whatsoever. Your Demon Portal, getting back on subject. Think about what you need to do in that fight. Warlord Yonos again, or Madness of Deathwing. Making sure you're in the right position instantly, because the less movement we do, the more damage we're doing. Shuttle Bolt is still our #1 main filler, guys. It does a ton of damage and will make up the majority of damage on your fight. While your dots are also ticking for tremendous amounts, you still want to be casting as many Shadow Bolts as humanly possible. Keeping that Shadow Embrace up, spreading Shadow Embrace between our targets, all that kind of stuff. Very important. So think about it heavily. Where should I Demon Portal? Do I want to reduce my movement as much as possible? Yes, I do. So my Demon Portal is the key to doing that, guys. So important. Think about where it needs to be, especially if you can get it under the boss, a brilliant position. If you need to move away from the boss at some point to DPS and add, think about your Sargeon sleeping. We need to go and DPS some globules. Put it under the boss so you can instantly teleport straight back. You're in Shadow Flame position. Really, really good, guys, okay? Think about that kind of stuff as much as possible and reduce your movement downtime. The last thing to talk about is AoE. How do we AoE as an Affliction Warlock? Should I multi-dot? Should I just spam Seed of Corruption? What the hell should I do, Preacher Man? Generally, it's about 6 mobs. If 6 mobs are up, that's when you want to be multi-dotting. You definitely want your Unstable Affliction and your Corruption ticking on all those mobs. Keeping Horn on the target that's going to live the longest, and keeping your pet on that target. Again, assist me on a Fel Hunter is a waste of DPS. You want your Fel Hunter DPSing 100% of the time. His Shadow Bite hits like a truck. His Shadow Bite bites your ass off, baby. It's like that big vicious dog. You need that bad boy there. If we start getting more than 6 mobs, we're absolutely going to be using our improved Seed of Corruption, so we get Corruption on everything, and then we're going to start spamming Corruption into that #1 target. If we've got a ton of mobs, that's what we want to be doing. But remember, Seed of Corruption replaces the actual Corruption spell. So don't be spreading Seed of Corruption on all sorts of targets. When we've used our improved Seed of Corruption to get Corruption on everything, we then just spam Seed of Corruption into the main nuke target. That should mean as soon as Seed of Corruption lands, it ignites, it ticks off. Remember, Seed of Corruption needs a certain amount of damage to happen to the mob before it explodes. So we pick the target that's going to live the longest and no doubt has most of the damage going into it, especially if everyone else is AoEing. It should literally be in between each cast. Our Seed of Corruption will be exploding on all those targets, doing huge amounts of damage. Think about that, guys. Very, very important. And that's how we do our big Warlock AoE. Boom, you happy with that? I hope you are, guys. I will see you again shortly. I've got a couple of videos coming up with some house stuff and all that kind of stuff and guides. I'm talking about obviously transferring to Method. I hope to see you again in person. Live show will be coming as soon as we can possibly do it. We've got some big setups for that. I'll see you again, guys. Take it easy.